Let me tell you of the days of high adventure.
Hey there nation, and welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and we are back with another episode of the Golden Age. This is a series of Warhammer Fantasy Battle Reports, and this is Battle Report number 130. It is a 3,000 point battle that is fought between Tzeentch, Legion of Chaos, as well as Lizardmen. My buddy O'Death is bringing the Esoteric Order of the Thousand Suns, his 3,000 point Tzeentch, Legion of Chaos army, and I will once again be playing the Lizards of Waaaghz, my 3,000 point Lizardmen army. So for those of you guys who are tuning in for the very first time, what is happening is that I have now finally cobbled together a 3,000 point Lizardmen army, and I am taking this army through its paces by making a fight against every single army within the studio's collection to see exactly how it turns out. So in this case, we'll be throwing it against Legion of Chaos real fast. So we're going to play some background music. As the music is playing, we'll show you photos of both armies as well as their rosters. So if you want to see exactly what we're bringing for this one, you can pause and take a look at your own leisure, or check down the description box below for more details. So with that being said, let's get this battle report on a roll.
Crom, I've never prayed you before. I have no tongue for it. No one, not even you, will remember if we were good men or bad, why we fought or why we died. No. All that matters is that two stood against many. That's what's important. Power pleases you, Crom. So grant me one request. Grant me revenge. And if you do not listen, then the hell with you.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
So the scenario rules for this one is Battle Line is the most typical game of Warhammer Fantasy that we play on this channel, with standard deployment as well as standard victory conditions. So with the scenario rules over, let's go on and talk about battle plans as well as deployments. So here's an overhead shot of the entirety of the battlefield. As you see, we're playing on a 4x6 table. I'm deployed on the far side of the table, while my friend O'Death is deployed on the near side of the table. So for the most part, this game is going to be about a battle on the flanks once again, because whoever controls the flanks in this battle report will be the one who basically controls the course of the battle. And the reason why that is the case is because both of us have really close combat oriented army lists, and I think I have actually much more close combatants than he actually does. So my plan here is to basically conquer the flanks, so that way I can send most of my two killing units, my Temple Guard as well as my Source Warriors, and go directly to the middle and finish up for the most part. Now I do have my work cut out for me, and the reason why is because my buddy O'Death has done exactly the same thing with his deployment as well. As you can see, he has Chaos Knights as well as his Megalith Vortex Beasts protecting his left hand flank, while he has his Demon of Chaos, his Demon of Tzeentch, as well as his Screamer's Tzeentch on the right hand flank protecting his right hand side. So what I'm planning on doing is I'm planning on sending my Carnosaur as well as my Source Cav into the left hand flank with my Pterodon Riders. Hopefully I can soften up that way, break through the left hand flank, and then do a button hook to the left to smash my opponent's left hand flank, while at the same time do a coordinated charge down the center with my Source Warriors as well as my Temple Guards and defeat them that way. Meanwhile, my right hand flank will be protected by my Bulbasaur as well as my unit of the Karma Chameleons there on the river side there. They get some additional protections from using the Aquatic Special Rule, and I'm planning on using that river to protect their right hand flank. And that's pretty much what my battle plan is for this one. Now for my buddy O'Death, he plans on pretty much doing exactly the same thing. I talked to him actually after the game about what his battle plan was. His battle plan was to send his cavalry from his Chaos Knights as well as Megalith Vortex Beast to the left to kind of occupy myself there, using the Aura of Madness ability from the Megalith Vortex Beast to cause a lot of problems for my army. Meanwhile, he's going to soften up my main ranks by using his two Exalted Flamers in order to shoot me up, as well as use magic from his Pink Horrors, as well as from his Spellcaster Skesis Dark Crystals to fly around and cause problems. Meanwhile, he plans on using his General as well as his Flyers to kind of sweep around the right to hit me that way as well. So with the battle plans over, let's go on and talk about deployments real quick. Alright, first of all, let's go and talk about deployment for the Esoteric Order of the Thousand Suns. Make up the left-hand flank, we have the Second Sons, using 10 Chaos Knights as Tzeentch with Musician as well as Standard Bearer. They're packing ensorcel weapons, shields, and Chaos Armor, and they're riding upon Chaos Steeds. And right next on the right-hand side, that is the Shadow over Innistrad. It is a Megalith Vortex Beast. So making up his center deployment here. Up on the left-hand side, we have from the front, we have the Rune of Sarnath, which is a Exalted Flamer as Tzeentch, and right next on the right-hand side, that is the Quest of Iranon, a second Exalted Flamer as Tzeentch. Now you'll notice my friend actually makes a mistake on this one. He forgot to deploy his Chaos Sorcerer on a disc of Tzeentch. He's actually going to end up being right between the Mutilated Vortex Beast as well as the Exalted Flamer, the Rune of Sarnath here. But I'll talk about what he has because my buddy forgot to put him in here in his deployment. So that character is called Skesis of Dark Crystals. He is a Chaos Sorcerer as Tzeentch, level 2, Lore as Tzeentch. He's got Chaos Armor. He's packing Bolt of Change as well as Infernal Gateway. He's also got the Enchanted Shield as well as Talisman of Reservation. He's also got the Third Eye as Tzeentch, and he's running a Disc as Tzeentch. And finally, right behind him, that unit is called the Stormlords. It's a huge unit of 29 Chaos Warriors as Tzeentch. They have Musician as well as Standard Bearer. They're packing Halberds and Chaos Armor. And leading that unit is Accold Hellbrass, the Champion as Tzeentch. He's an Exalted Hero as Tzeentch. He's got the Battle Standard Bearer upgrade. He's also packing Chaos Armor and a shield. He's also carrying an Ogre Blade for +2 strength, as well as a Dragon Helm. And then right next on the right-hand side, that unit is called the Dunwich Horrors. A unit of 20 pink horrors, the Musician is Standard Bearer. They're level 1 Wizard with the Lore as Tzeentch, and they're packing the Blue Fire as Tzeentch for their spell. And finally, make up his right deployment, we have Lord Tremendous, who is a Demon Prince of Tzeentch. He's also the general of this army. He's got Chaos Armor as well as Demonic Flight. He's level 4 Wizard with the Lore of Metal. He's got Searing Doom, Enchanted Blades of Aiban, Glittering Robes, Gehenna's Golden Hounds, as well as Final Transmutation. And the reason why he's packing 5 spells is because he's got Chaos Familiar, Flaming Breath, as well as Soul Feeder for his gift. He's also got the Charm Shield, the Dragonbane Gem, as well as the other Trickster Shard for his magical items. And then right next to him, of course, are 2 units of 3 Screamers as Tzeentch called the Killers Out of Space, as well as the Hunters of the Dark. And that makes a deployment for my friend Odeth for this battle report. So moving across the table to my deployment for the Lizards of Waaaghz, Vanguard up toward 12 inches. Those units are called the Charizards. You have 3 Pterodon riders with Fire Leech Bolas and riding Pterodons. And making up the left-hand flank of my main battle line, that is Gatorade. He is a Sora's Old Blood. He's equipped with a shield. He's got Fencer's Blades, giving that 10 up weapon skill. He's also got Glittering Scales, giving that -1 to hit, so most people will be hitting him at a 5 up. He's also got the Talisman Endurance for a 5 award save. And he is mounted on Powerade, which is a Carnosaur. He's got the Blood Roar as well as Loping Stride upgrades. And right next on the right-hand side, the unit is called the Jurassic Jousters. You have 10 Cold One Riders with Musician and Standard Bearer. They're packing shields and spears, and they're riding Cold Ones. And in my center deployment is where majority of my infantry forces are located at. On the left-hand side, that unit is called the Saurus, which is a unit of 40 Saurus warriors with Musician and Standard Bearer. They're also packing shields and spears. And right next on the right-hand side, that is the Guacamole Guards, you know, 32 Temple Guards. They got full command as well as halberds, light armor, as well as shield. And they're also packing the Standard Discipline for +1 leadership. Now, the reason why they're doing that is because the general for this army is also deploying that unit as well. His name is Kermit the Slan. He is a Slan Mage Priest. He's also general for my army. He's also got a Battle Standard Bearer upgrade as well. He's level 4 Lore of High Magic, and he's got Focus of Mystery, which gives him the Lore Master attribute for all the spells of High Magic, as well as Harmonic Convergence. So that way he's channeling 2 dice for his Dispel scroll, for his Power dice, as well as his Dispel dice. He's also got a Channeling Staff to help him up with that with a 5 up for his channeling ability. And making up the right-hand flank of my army, on the left-hand side, that character is called the Bulbasaur, which is a Pistolodon with a Solar Engine upgrade. And right next to them, a unit called the Karma Chameleons. These are 24 Skinks with full command. They have Lestrian Javelins as well as shields. They also have 3 Croxagore equipped with great weapons. And leading that unit as well, I got 2 characters. On the left-hand side, that character is called Snarl. He's a level 1 Priest with a level 1 Lore of Heavens. He's got the Comet of Casanadora. He's also got a Dispel Scroll as well as a Ruby Ring of Ruin. And on the far right-hand side, that unit is called Slag. He's a Skink Priest, level 2 Wizard of the Lore of Beasts. He's got Wiston's Wild Form as well as the Amber Spear. He's also packed on the Sword of Striking as well as the Cube of Darkness. And that makes up my deployment for this one. So deployment over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 1, and both Odeth and I roll off for initiative to see which of us will be going first. Alright, so that takes us right to the top of turn number 1, and I get to go first on this one, which is absolutely fantastic. So this photo is taken after the movement phase. As you can see in this photo, I just march up as quickly as I possibly can in order to engage my enemy. I'm playing Lizardmen. The only way I'm going to be able to defeat you is in close combat, so there's no point in just sitting around waiting. So as you can see in this photo, I don't declare any charges just because I'm too far away, but I do march up everything up forward that I can possibly march up forward. For the most part, I should take that back. For the most part, I march up everything. So first thing I do, of course, is I march fly my Charizards right over the Second Suns. And the reason why I do that is because when they fly right over them, I make them drop rocks, manage to kill 2 Chaos Knights. causing D3 strength for impact hits times 3, which is awesome because I got 3 pterodons. Managed to kill 2 of those Chaos Knights, and that part was absolutely hilarious because it's nothing like killing elite cavalry with cheap shaft choices from your special for your special bull, which is absolutely kind of cool. At the same time, I move up Powerade as well as Gatorade as well as his mount Powerade. I just move up the normal movement allowance of 7 inches forward just because I didn't want to be countercharged by the Second Sons. I wanted to keep some distance between him as well as the Second Son, so that way they don't do a countercharge against my guy. At the same time, I also move up the Jurassic Jousters exactly the same movement allowance, so that way I don't get countercharged for the most part. Because I also want to protect my left-hand flank from being charged against from that Megalith Vortex Beast, as well as those Chaos Knights. Meanwhile, I march up to the Saurus, as well as the Guacamole Guard, as well as Bulbasaur, as well as my Karma Chameleons, because I'm trying to close a distance. And that makes up my movement phase. So here's a close-up of the movement phase. You can see my Pterodon Riders from my Charizards managed to kill 2 Chaos Knights because my buddy unfortunately rolled 2 1s for his armor save. He also failed his 6 of ward saves, so that part was kind of sad. And here's a close-up of Powerade as well as Gatorade, moving up forward on the left-hand side with my Jurassic Jousters in tow. And here's a close-up of the Thesaurus as well as the Guacamole Guards crossing the battlefield as quickly as possible in order to engage my opponents. And I'm just going to take a little segue here to gush a little bit of my own craftsmanship. I really like the way these colors really came out for both units. They're absolutely fantastically bright colored and Technicolor almost, which is really, really cool. And finally, here's a close-up of the Bulbasaur as well as the Karma Chameleons moving up the right-hand flank, getting ready to approach my enemies so that way I can do some shooting. So with the movement phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. And during the magic phase, I actually had a pretty successful magic phase. Got a lot of power dice on this one. I was able to get off a lot of my skink spells, and the reason why is because my opponent was pretty much knew what my plan was. I threw a bunch of skink spells directly at my opponents. That way, I was hoping he'd use up his dispel dice to stop those from happening. But he actually let a couple of them through because he was actually more worried about actually stopping my high magic spells. So that's the reason why. So the first thing I was able to do, I was able to get Snarl to unleash the Comet of Cassandora. As you can see in this photo, put it right there, smack dab, right in front of the Stormlords, as well as in front of the Quest of Iranon, as well as the Rune of Sarnath. The idea that I put the Comet right in front of his battle line is because he's going to advance forward because he's a Chaos Legion army, which means they're going to advance forward to do close combat. Hopefully what this means is that I will be able to get his back ranks of his battle line. Hopefully I can destroy him that way with the Comet, and that's the reason why I put it right there. And if you notice on the left hand side, you can see Skesis of Dark Crystal right next to the Quest of Iranon, but that's because my buddy forgot to put his miniature on the table. He felt really bad about it. I said, no worries man, we're just playing for fun, so go ahead and just put him there. It's perfectly fine. No harm, no foul. And at the same time, I was able to give up Wiston's Wild Form off on my Karma Chameleons, giving them +1 strength and +1 toughness, which is awesome because now all my skinks are strength 4, toughness 4, which means their javelins are also strength 4, and my Kroxigor are strength 6, toughness 6, which is absolutely fantastic. Now for the rest of the magic phase, my opponent is pretty much able to dispel most of my spells. However, I was able to get off Walk Between Worlds for Gatorade mounted on Powerade. I did the boosted version on that one, so these guys go flying up 20 inches forward and landing right smack on the left-hand flank of my opponent's army because nothing's going to tear up or flank quicker than an Osaurus Old Blood mounted on a Carnosaur. So the magic phase over with, they skip the shooting phase because all my shooting melons marched up forward, and there's no one engaged in close combat, so we go directly to the bottom turn number 1 for the Chaos Legion of Tzeentch. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about turn number 1 for the Legion of Chaos. So this photo is taken after the movement phase. As you can see in this photo, quite a bit of movement ended up happening on this one. So the first thing that my opponent does, he actually declares 2 charges. The first one he actually declares is a charge with the colors out of space, his 3 Screamers of Tzeentch. They charge directly across the left-hand side of the battlefield, across the main battle line, smashing directly into my Charizards. So now my 3 Pterodon Riders are engaged in close combat. At the same time, he also declares a charge with Lord Tremendous, and he tries to fly him against Gatorade. Unfortunately for my buddy Odette, though, he did fail his charge distance, so because he only moves up 6 inches directly to that crater on the left-hand side, having failed his charge reaction. At the same time, pretty much everything else just kind of marches up forward for the most part. The first thing he does, he marches up the Dunwich Horrors, kind of puts in the middle of the table, tempting me to charge against him in order to make a good target, because let's face it, those pink horrors are not really good at close combat, and hopefully I can take those guys out. At the same time, he also marches up his Stormlords as well. They move up forward, I think 4 inches, I think, is what they moved up. They didn't actually go up their full marching distance, and the reason why is so that way he could actually do a counter charge against my Thesaurus, so that part's kind of pretty smart on that one. Meanwhile, on the left-hand side, he marches up his Shadow of Innistrad, moving him directly towards a beeline toward my Thesaurus. At the same time, he also moves up the Quest of Iranon as well as the Rune of Sarnath, so that way they can get within close range to open fire with their Exalted Flames directly into Gatorade and Powerade. The last thing he does, I forgot to mention this earlier, he did declare a charge with the Second Sons, and they do a successful charge directly into the Jurassic Jousters. My opponent also passes danger terrain test for charging through the forest and engage my Cold One Riders in close combat. So here's a close-up of the charge phase. As you can see of this movement phase here, you can see that the colors out of space have flown directly into my Charizards. At the same time, you can see the failed charge of Lord Tremendous. You can also see that the Quests of Aranon, as well as the Rune of Sarnath, are moving up to shoot at my at Gatorade and Powerade with their Exalted Flames. You can see in the background there a little bit with the Shadow of Innistrad moving up forward. And here's a close-up of Skesis Dark Crystal did a March Fly directly right behind Gatorade and Powerade, which I'm actually kind of worried about because he could unleash Bolt of Change or Infernal Gateway on me, and that would be all kinds of bad for my Saurus Old Blood. And here's a close-up of the Second Sons connecting directly in close combat with my Jurassic Jousters. So I'm actually kind of excited to see how this combat goes, because I want to see exactly how my Cold One Riders actually fare against Chaos Knights. And here's a close-up of the Stormlords as well as the Dunwich Horrors moving up directly into the center portion of the battlefield. And lastly, here's a close-up of the Hunters of the Dark, who actually did a March Fly directly right over my Karmic Chameleons. They did sweeping attack while they did so. Luckily for me, though, I was able to only lose one skink, and the reason why is because I had Wiston's Wallow form on this unit, which gave them +1 toughness, which really helped out as well. So with the movement phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. So in the magic phase, my opponent actually rolled up Nurgle's Rot because he rolled a 6 on that one. So the Reign of Chaos chart actually rolled a d6, and everybody I think takes 2d6 strength, 3 hits I think is what they actually do because of Nurgle's Rot. Now I forgot to take a photo of it, but all my units were pretty much fine except for one, the Bulbasaur, which is my Bastiladon. Unfortunately for him, he actually suffered 3 wounds from Nurgle's Rot, so that part was really horrible as well. Luckily for me though, my opponent's magic phase was pretty lackluster. I was able to dispel most of it, almost all of his spells, actually dispelled all of his spells. So because that, not much really occurred past the Reign of Chaos chart. In the shooting phase, though, it did not work out too well for me. I believe it was the Quest of Iranon, I believe is what it was, which is the blue Exalted Flame. We managed to put 2 wounds directly onto Gatorade, the Rider, the General, not the General, I'm sorry, the Old Blood. And the reason why is because I flubbed my armor save, and I also flubbed my ward saves on that one. So because of that, that character's got 2 wounds put directly onto him, which is actually kind of sad. So, but you know, at the same time, though, these are Exalted Flamers, and they are doing what they're supposed to. So with that, we go directly to the combat phase. As you can see here, close combat between my opponent and myself was not really good for me too much. He was actually able to put 1 wound onto one of my characters, onto one of my Pterodons, which was actually kind of sad. And I did nothing back to my opponent. So because of that, my opponent actually won this battle by 2. And the leadership of the Skinks are actually really bad. They're like leadership 5, which means that my leadership 5 dropped down to leadership 3 because of this. So of course, I do have to roll for a break test. I fail my break test, I flee, and my opponent pursues. And as you can see, my opponent had no problem whatsoever just running down the last of my Charizards and managed to kill those guys to a man, which is kind of sad. At the same time, that also opens up my left-hand flank for Gatorade and Powerade for being flank charged by those 3 Screamers, and that can be really bad because they have that Lamprey bite special rule. So combat here between the Second Sons as well as the Jurassic Jousters actually went really well. I managed to kill 3 members of the Second Sons. They did manage to kill 2 of my members of my Jurassic Jousters, which is actually not bad. So because I actually won the combat, well, I won, but because my opponent charged forward, he actually evened it out. So because of that, we both hit a draw on this one. It's a push, so both of us will have to engage for another round of close combat. So with the combat phase over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 2, and we go directly to the Lizardmen. Alright, so that takes us right to the top of turn number 2 for the Lizardmen, and this photo is taken after the movement phase, and as you can see here, I pretty much start reacting to my opponent. Unfortunately for me, I decided to divide up my forces, and traditionally speaking, dividing up your forces is never a good idea. However, though, I want to protect my right-hand flank, and that's the reason why I did it. So the first thing I do, of course, I declare a charge. The first thing I do is declare a charge with Gatorade as well as Powerade, just because I did not like the idea of having a Chaos Sorcerer on my back, as well as 3 Screamers of Slanesh on my 3 Screamers of Tzeentch on my left-hand side, and my opponent's general is right across from me. I think I could take that fight, so I sent him forward. So Gatorade goes smashing directly in the front with Lord Tremendous, catching him in close combat. At the same time, I also declare a charge with the Saurus as well. The Saurus goes charging up forward directly into the Dunwich Horse and catching those guys in close combat. And between you and me, I know I got that fight. 20 Pink Horrors against 36 Temple Guard, that's not even a contest. So I know they're going to be perfectly fine there. Unfortunately for me, though, I failed my charge with my Thesaurus. I declared charge with my Thesaurus to go directly into the front of the Stormlords on that one. And unfortunately for me, I failed my charge. So because I do only go forward 4 inches, and you can see right there, I kind of stuck right there on the left-hand side, right in the middle of the table. So I don't get to charge my opponent. However, though, there is a silver lining, and that silver lining is I do manage to protect the left-hand flank of the Guacamole guards, so I'll take what I can get at this point. My Jurassic Jousters are still engaged in close combat with the Second Sons, and then what I do for my right-hand flank, I do a swift reform by passing my leadership test with my Musician for my Karmic Chameleons. They turn 180 degrees facing the back of the Hunters of the Dark because I'm going to unleash some wonderful poison attacks against those guys. At the same time, I'll also take my Bastillodon and turn the right-hand side so that way you can hopefully launch a beam of Chotec directly into the Screamers and destroy them that way as well. And if you notice, he's got a little red die next to him. That's because he suffered 3 wounds in the last phase, on the last turn with the Nurgle's Rot. I forgot to take a photo of it in the last turn. And that pretty much makes up my move phase for this one. So here's a close-up of Gatorade and Powerade going directly into Lord Tremendous, and I'm really looking forward to see exactly how this fight turns out because nothing will test a Swords or Blood on a Connoisseur more than a Demon Prince. I'm excited exactly to see how that combat goes. Meanwhile, here's a close-up of my Jurassic Jouster still engaged in close combat with the Second Sons, as well as a failed charge attempt by the Source, and you know, there's some problems associated with that. And here's a close-up of my Guacamole guards charging directly into the Dunwich Horrors, and between you and me, I know I got that fight, so that one should not be a problem too badly for my Guacamole guards. And finally, here's a close-up of my Bulbasaur as well as my Karmic Chameleons getting ready to square off directly against the Hunters of the Dark. And that pretty much makes up my move phase on that one. So move phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. So once again, during the magic phase, I was able to cast off Wiston's Wild Form once again onto my unit of my Karmic Chameleons. And the reason why I was able to get that spell off is because I decided to cast Fireball from the Ring of Ruin for my guy Snarl, which is the Lord of Heaven's Skink Priest. I tried to open fire with Fireball directly into the Hunters of the Dark. My opponent decided to use some Dispel Dice as build that one, so that one went away. But because of that, I was able to use Wiston's Wild Form in order to get off that spell, giving +1 strength and toughness to my Skinks. My opponent was able to stop me from casting other spells, but the one spell I was able to get off was Apotheosis, which is really nice, which is a Lore of Heaven spell. I cast that from Kermit the Slan directly onto Gatorade and Powerade, managed to heal 2 of their wounds, which is absolutely nice, so they're going back up to fresh, and they also cause fear. But since the whole entire model causes terror, it's not much of a difference, but it was nice getting those 2 wounds back, which is really awesome. So the magic phase over with, we go directly to the shooting phase, and unfortunately for me though, I was unable to put very many wounds directly onto the Hunters of the Dark. I was able to put 2 wounds on those guys. I actually got a bunch of wounds on this one, but my buddy Odette just rolled out of the box for his ward save, so I was only able to put 2 wounds on these guys, which is kind of sad. But at the same time though, it's 2 less wounds I got to worry about, so I'll take what I can get at this point. So with the shooting phase over with, we go directly to the combat phase. So starting off combat between the Second Sons as well as Jurassic Jousters, I do manage to kill 2 members of the Chaos Knights, which is absolutely fantastic. At the same time though, they're able to kill 2 of my guys, so that part was kind of sad. We do go to a draw, which means that we basically have musicians, but we both have musicians as well, so not much really goes there, so we're stuck there for another round of close combat, which is perfectly fine because so long as I keep these Chaos Knights busy, they're not charging, running around, and killing my other guys. However, close combat between the Carnosaur, Gatorade, and Powerade against Lord Tremendous did not go so well. Lord Tremendous was able to put 1 wound onto me, which is actually kind of nice. And the reason why is because of that -1 to hit against with my Glittering Scale. So because of that, he was striking me at 5 up, which really helped me out on that one as well. Unfortunately though, I was unable to put any wounds onto Lord Tremendous. My strength attacks are just being mitigated by his really high armor save. Lord Tremendous has a +1 armor save, so because I wasn't able to get past that, and the ones I was able to get past through his armor, my opponent ward saved. So technically speaking, he actually won this combat, but I do pass my break test, so we go another round. However, close combat to the Dunwich Horrors as well as the Guacamole Guards was absolutely fantastic. My opponent, Odette, was not able to cause a single injury directly onto my Guacamole Guards, so I lost 0 Temple Guards in this one. However, for my opponent though, he lost 8 of his Chaos Demons, which was absolutely fantastic. However, his unit is unbreakable, so because they don't flee, but because they have the instability rule combined with all the other bonuses I get from combat resolution, I just atomized that unit with the remainder of combat resolution, which is fantastic. I have a battle standard bearer, I have a standard, I have 3 ranks, I also charged as well, plus you take into account the 8 wounds I had on top of that, it was enough to wipe out the entire unit, so that part was totally epic. So with the combat phase over with, we go directly to the bottom of turn number 2 for the Legion of Chaos. So with that, we go directly to the bottom of turn number 2 for the Legion of Chaos, and this photo is taken after the move phase. At this point, my buddy Odette goes in for the kill because he charges everything in that can. The first thing he does, of course, he declares a charge With the Hunters of the Dark, they go directly to the left-hand flank of the Bulbasaur, so because that, my Bastiladon is now being flanked by 3 Screamers, which is absolutely terrifying. At the same time, he also declares a charge with his Colors Out of Space. They go directly to the right-hand flank of Gatorade and Powerade as well, stuck in a pincer attack against Lord Tremendous. Meanwhile, he also declares a charge of the Stormlords. The Stormlords go charging directly into the front of the Thorsaurus, as well as the Mutalith Vortex Beast, the Shadow of Innistrad. He goes directly in the front as well. Now, while that's occurring, he also moves up both the Quest of Iranon and the Rune of Sarnath. He actually moves those guys over the right-hand side, just using their normal Moonalounce to kind of protect the right-hand flank of the Stormlords, and the reason why is because they plan on doing some shooting with their Exalted Flames directly into my Guacamole Guard. The last thing that my opponent does, of course, he March Flies Skesis Dark Crystal Land right behind the Jurassic Jousters, as well as the Thesaurus. That way he can cause all kinds of chaos that way. So here's a close-up of the move phase. You can see here the Colors Out of Space as well as Lord Tremendous have now caught Gatorade and Powerade in a pincer attack, and so that part's not so great. Meanwhile, at the top of the screen, you can see that the Second Sons as well as the Jurassic Jousters still engage in close combat, and Skesis of Dark Crystal makes himself a nice little nest there right between both the Jurassic Jousters as well as the Thesaurus. And here's a close-up of the close combat between the Stormlords as well as the Shadow of Innistrad against my Thesaurus, so that part's kind of crazy. And meanwhile, at the same time, you can see that both the Quest of Iranon as well as the Rune of Sarnath are moving over the right-hand side to open fire upon the Guacamole Guards. And finally, here's also a close-up of the Bulbasaur going up directly against the Hunters of the Dark as well. So with the move phase over with, we accidentally skipped the magic phase. And the reason why we skipped the magic phase on this one is because my opponent, when he rolled up for his power dice, I forgot to take a photo of the power dice that he rolled. At the same time, I also forgot to take a picture of the magic phase. And the reason why that was the case is because nothing really happened in the magic phase. I was able to dispel all of his spells, and I think that's the reason why I forgot to take photos of it. I do apologize. He did roll a 7 on this one, which meant that he was supposed to get Tzeentch's, the one with the Tzeentch where he opens up with Firestorm on you for the Rainy Chaos chart, but unfortunately for him though, his shot didn't land anywhere, and I think that's the reason why I didn't take any photos, because not much really happened there. So I do apologize for that. So with the magic phase over with, because nothing really happened, we go directly to the shooting phase. Now during the shooting phase, the Quest of Iranon actually rolled a misfire, and because he accidentally gets killed because that misfire attempt that he rolled for his flames, for his blue flames as Tzeentch. So because that, he goes directly out of action and he dies. However, the Quest of the Rune of Sarnath though, he opens fire with a pink flame as Tzeentch, which basically means he fires a flame template forward. As you can see, the flame template bounces forward and actually strikes 10 of my Guacamole Guard with the template blast. So that part was pretty scary. Now here's where the funny part comes in. He rolls for the strength of his attack, and he rolled a 1 on that one, so because of that, it was strength 1 attacks for him. Needless to say, I survived the strength 1 attacks, no problem. Now, I don't get regen from it, but at the same time, though, Tzeentch kind of abandoned my buddy there in the shooting phase for that part. So the shooting phase over with, to go directly to the combat phase. In the combat phase, the fight between the Second Sons as well as the Jurassic Jousters landed in my favor on this one. Unfortunately, my opponent, he was unable to cause any injuries to my Jurassic Jousters. I did manage to kill one of his troops as well. And it was actually the standard bearer for his unit too. So because I won this combat by 2, he has to take a break test, which he fails, he flees, and I pursue. And when my buddy fled, I think he fled 6 inches, but I think I rolled an 8 in order to chase him down. So because I do run down the Second Sons and kill the last man, and also land just about a ½ inch away from the forest on the bottom left-hand side of the battlefield. And just like that, things are starting to look up on the left-hand flank. And to add insult to injury as well, I was able to finally kill off Lord Tremendous, which is absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately for me though, it wasn't Gatorade that was able to do anything, which was my Saurus Old Blood. He didn't achieve anything. However, it was Powerade, my Carnosaur, with that D3 multiple wounds he was able to get off. He was able to hit him 3 times and wound him 3 times. Unfortunately for my opponent, he failed his ward save all 3 times, so because he caused D3 wounds for each hit. So I think he managed to put, I think 7 or 8 wounds directly onto Lord Tremendous, managed to kill that guy and one-shot him, which is absolutely fantastic. So because of that, got really good on that one. My opponent, of course, tries to do a counterattack, of course, with the Colors Out of Space, but unfortunately for him, though, he's only able to put a wound onto Powerade as well as Gatorade as well. I do a quick combat reform to face off against the Screamers from the Colors Out of Space, and we go another round. However, what was not so great though was close combat that took place here in the middle of the table. So let's talk about the close combat phase. As you can see in this photo, I managed to kill 5 members of the Stormlord as well as put 2 wounds on the Shadow of Innistrad, which is absolutely fantastic. However though, my opponent though was able to put 12 of my Saurus Warriors down. That's what he decided to do. So because of that, he actually wins this combat by 5 as it ends up happening. And the reason why that's the case is actually not 5. He wins it by 6 actually. I do apologize on that one. And the reason why is because while we both have rank bonuses, that doesn't really do much of anything because those cancel each other out. However, what he gets that additional bonus point from is that he does have Alkoth Hellbrass, his exalted hero, who's also the army's battle standard bearer. So because of that, he actually wins by 6. My leadership is not that great. I roll for my leadership, I fail my brag tests, and I have to flee. The worst part is I fled like 4 inches, and the Shadow of Innistrad, though, I think rolled an 11. So because of that, the Mutileth Vortex Beast goes chasing after the source and ends up eating them, every single one of them, and devouring them and sending their souls screaming into the warp, which is absolutely horrible for me. That's a huge honking unit, and I lost all my warriors in one fell swoop. I'm starting to think that putting that many soldiers in one giant unit might not be such a great idea, but, you know, there's the breaks, I guess. And to make matters worse, of course, Death does a quick combat reform real quick to have them face off to the right-hand side, so that way they can charge into the left-hand flank of my Guacamole guards, which is absolutely terrible. And to make matters worse, on the top of the table there, as you can see there, I was unable to do anything against the Hunters of the Dark. My Bulbasaur was unable to do anything in close combat. The Bulbasaurs weren't able to do anything to me either, but they did charge me. They also got me on a flank as well, which means they won by 2 points. I do have to take a break test. Unfortunately, the Bastiladon fails his break test, and he gets ran down by the Hunters of the Dark. I believe the Hunters of the Dark rolled like an 8 to chase down the Bastiladon. I think my Bastiladon went 3 inches. He didn't go very far. You know, he's a kind of a chubby, squat little guy. He can't move very quickly. So because of the Hunters of the Dark go running across the Terra battlefield and eat my Bulbasaur alive and go directly into the back rank of the Guacamole guards, catching me from the rear. So things are not looking good whatsoever. So with that, we go directly to the top at number 3 for the Lizardmen, and this photo is taken after the move phase, and so now I gotta scramble real quick in order to save my guys. The first thing I do, of course, I can't declare any charges because my Guacamole guards are currently engaged in close combat from the back with the Hunters of the Dark. At the same time, I also have my Powerade and Gatorade who are still engaged in close combat with the colors out of space on the bottom left-hand corner of the table. So I can't declare any charges, so I do instead our Swift Reforms. I do a Swift Reform real quick with the Jurassic Jousters on the left-hand side. They reformed over to the right-hand side and move up, so that way if the Stormlords do decide to charge into my Guacamole guards, I can get them from behind, and that way engage in close combat that way. I do a quick Swift Reform as well with my Karma Chameleons following the leadership test with the Musician, and they turn left to the left-hand side, so that way they can also do some shooting or close combat as well. And that pretty much makes up my movement phase for this one. So here's a close-up movement phase with Gatorade as well as Powerade facing off the colors out of space. I'm looking forward to see exactly how that combat goes. At the same time, here's a close-up of my Jurassic Jousters getting ready to charge the back of the Stormlords, getting ready to cause pain that way as well. And here's a close-up of the Guacamole guards who have done a Swift Reform real quick to face off directly against the Hunters of the Dark, as well as my Karma Chameleons who did a Swift Reform as well, so that way they can get in later on in the later turns to get into a pincer attack with the Hunters of the Dark. So with the move phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. And in the magic phase, the Cometh cometh, and kaboom! The Comet of Cassandora drops right directly into the middle of the battlefield, and as you can see, as it explodes, it does an awesome job. First thing it does, it manages to kill 8 members of the Stormlord, which is absolutely fantastic. Also managed to kill the Ruin of Zarnath as well. So the Ruin of Zarnath gets atomized by the Comet, as well as 8 members of the Stormlords. And unfortunately for my buddy Death, he has to take a panic test for his guys, and unfortunately for my opponent, he failed his panic test. He fails his panic test, and I believe he actually flees to the left-hand side because the Guacamole guards are actually the closest enemy unit to him, so he has to flee that way to the left-hand side. Unfortunate for him, though, that, of course, that takes him right through the Jurassic Jousters, which means his men have to take dangerous terrain tests. I think he ends up losing 2 members of the Stormlords when that ends up happening, and of course, he's running to the left-hand side of the battlefield as well. So for the rest of the magic phase, I once again cast Walk Between Worlds off on the Jurassic Jousters. The Jurassic Jousters basically just kind of march up and swing to the left, so that way they can protect the left-hand flank of my Guacamole guards against the Shadow over Innistrad, as well as Skesis, a Dark Crystal, who's located up there in the upper left-hand corner of the photo. At the same time, I also casted the boosted version of the Amber Spear, firing that directly from Slag all the way into the right-hand flank of the Shadow of Innistrad. I actually cast the boosted version of this. I was able to get that one off, making it Strength 6, cause a D6 wounds, was absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately for my opponent, though, he failed his regen save, so because of that, when I rolled my D6 for the wounds, I rolled a 5, killing the Shadow of Innistrad outright. Luckily for my opponent, though, Skesis the Dark Crystal does pass his panic test for a unit destroyed within 6 inches, and that part was epic. However, there was a price to pay for that one. And the reason why is because I miscast 11 on that one.
Klaatu! Miranda!
So because of that, Snarl does forget the Amber Spear, and he's now a level 1 wizard, and the only spell he knows now is Wisdom's Wild Form, which is perfectly fine, all things considered. I'll gladly take that last since the Shadow of Innistrad is now dead. So with the magic phase over with, we skip the shooting phase because everybody's engaged in close combat, and we go directly to the combat phase. As you can see in this photo, I killed 2 members of the Killers out of the Colors of Space. Meanwhile, the Screamers weren't able to do anything back to me. I'm sorry, I killed 2 members of the Colors of Space and put two more floating wounds on the third one, and my opponent was able to do anything to me. So needless to say, I won this combat by a landslide, and the difference in combat resolution alone caused the third one to basically disappear into the warp. So because I do a quick combat reform to turn 180 degrees around to face off against the Stormlords, because hopefully I can charge at those guys and then tear them up as well in close combat, which would be absolutely fantastic. Meanwhile, combat between the Hunters of the Dark as well as my Guacamole guards was absolutely fantastic. I do lose 3 Temple Guard, but that is no harm, no foul there. And the reason why is because I was able to kill off 2 members of the Hunters of the Dark, as well as put a floating wound on the third one. And needless to say, because of the difference in combat resolution, the last one atomizes. So because I do a swift reform real quick to force us to face my Guacamole guards against the left-hand side to deal with Skesis the Dark Crystals, and that pretty much makes it the combat phase for this one. As at this point in the game, my buddy O'Death pretty much calls it, basically surrendering at this point, because the only thing he has left is a Chaos Sorcerer as well as the remains of his Stormlord. So because I realize he's not going to be able to recoup his losses, and he declares a defeat, at the same time netting another victory for the Lizardmen. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go directly to the After Action Report because this game is now officially over.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
Sure, I could have stayed in the past. Could have even been king. But in my own way, I am king. Hail to the king, baby.
Alright people, now it's time for the After Action Report. This is part of the battle report that we talk about what went well, what went poorly, and what we plan for the next time that we do battle. This is the After Action Report for the Golden Age Warhammer Fantasy Battle Report number 130, and this one ended being a victory for yours truly. In the end, I was able to score 2,530 victory points, while O'Death was able to score 818. For my losses, I lost the Thesaurus, the Charizards, as well as the Bulbasaur. For O'Death, he lost Lord Tremendous, the Runa Sarnath, the Quest of Iranon, the Dunwich Horrors, the Second Sons, the Colors of Space, the Hunters of the Dark, and the Shadow over Innistrad. This game was an absolute blast, quite literally. The Comet of Cassandora blasting down from the heavens really saved me in this battle report, because that comet forced the Stormlords to flee, which in turn really helped out my Guacamole guards from being charged in the left-hand flank. With the Stormlords fleeing like they did, it protected my left-hand flank from my Guacamole guards from being charged, and that really saved me a lot. And plus in addition to that, the magic in this game also really was a game changer for this battle as well. I was able to heal up Greater Raid as well as Power Raid, which allowed my Swords Old Blood and my Connoisseur to finally finish off Lord Tremendous, and at the same time also protected my left-hand flank from my forces. At the same time, during the combat phase, I was also really proud of my Jurassic Jousters and the way they dealt with the Second Sons. It really freed up my left-hand flank on this one, and so I'm really excited to have about those Saurus Cold One Riders, which are absolutely fantastic in this game as well. Now, unfortunately, I did make a massive mistake by dividing my forces on this one. Because of that, it really did almost cost me the game on that part. Dropping my right-hand flank with my Skinks and my Bulbasaur just to deal with 3 Screamers was actually a really bad move on that one. And the reason why is because it opened up my right-hand flank. I was able to bring enough forces up forward to deal with those Chaos Warriors that were coming my way. And the only reason why I was able to win this game was due to sheer luck. And the reason why is because had that comet not come down when it did, it really could have cost me this game. I could have potentially lost my Guacamole guards, and I would have lost this battle as well. And so I shouldn't really rely upon luck at this point, because it's something you don't want to rely upon when it comes to your actual battles. Currently right now, this army is sitting at 3 victories now as well as 0 defeats, and I'm actually having an absolute blast playing Lizardmen. And at the same time, this was an extremely fun game against O'Death. It's always a blast whenever I get to fight against this guy. guy. And as always, I am looking forward to the rematch. So that's good to listen to you guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest, greatest hobby news related to this channel. That's good for this one, you guys. We will catch you guys next one. Peace out and stay classy.